Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. We're here every Monday, 4:30 PM, to look back on recent developments in the world of boxing. And the biggest thing to happen over the weekend is not a fight that took place, with all due respect to Stephen Fulton's world title win over Angelo Leo. And it's not a fight that's even been officially confirmed. But it is the Ryan Garcia teen idol. Well, he's not a teen anymore, but probably idolised by teens. And fresh off that eye-catching win over Luke Campbell, has announced via Instagram, where else, that he'll be fighting Manny Pacquiao next, much to the surprise of a wide variety of boxing personalities and fans. Garcia was widely expected to be closing in on securing a fight with Tank Davis, lightweight rival, of course, fellow young gun, both unbeaten. Very exciting clash. A lot of fans were looking forward to it. But Tank himself said not too long ago on Twitter that he now realised that fight wasn't going to happen right now. And then Garcia, not long after, posted on Instagram a mocked up poster of himself and Manny Pacquiao. And the most impressive thing about that was that he spelt the senator's surname correctly. So well done, Ryan, or whoever is producing his artwork. But all mirth aside, boxing fans on social media were characteristically, you might say, quick to focus on the negatives of the situation, mainly that Tank against Garcia wouldn't be happening anytime soon, and neither would Manny Pacquiao against Terence Crawford, another fight that had been rumoured. Crawford, of course, is still waiting for that elite level opponent at welterweight. He's a three-weight world champion, but often gets underrated because he hasn't had quality of opposition, particularly in comparison to his big rival Errol Spence. And Spence has the advantage of working with Premier Boxing champions who have the majority of world-class welterweights under contract. So it makes it quite difficult for Crawford to set himself apart. But yeah, so he will not be fighting Manny Pacquiao next if Ryan Garcia's Instagram post is to be believed. I prefer to focus on the positives of the fight. They're 20 years apart almost in age. Pacquiao 42, Garcia 22, although Garcia's birthday is a bit earlier, so it's not exactly 2 decades, just to be anal about it. And there are, concerns in that Pacquiao hasn't fought since July 2019, so a year and a half already. We don't know when, if the Garcia fight happens, exactly when that will be scheduled for. But the Filipino legend, multi-weight world champion, 6 for me, 8 for others. It depends which belts you count, lineal and so on. I don't really want to go into that. Top 4 or big 4 belts are the ones that I count generally. So 6 weight for me, Manny Pacquiao. But moving on from that, living legend, most accomplished fighter, still active in the sport, no question about that. Only loss since the defeat to Floyd Mayweather was against Jeff Horn. That was both contentious and seems ever more like an aberration each time Pacquiao fights. He's been on good form since. But it should be noted that his restorative victory over Keith Thurman back in 2019 came just 6 months after a comprehensive win over Adrian Broner. Kind of hints at the fact that regular activity, if you call every 6 months regular activity, I guess guys from the 70s and 80s would laugh at that notion. But that aside, for a legend like Pacquiao, an elite level fighter, twice a year is pretty good. That hints at the fact that regular activity for him is a good thing and leads to better performances. He's not been out, as I say, for 17 months, 18 months now. It'll be even longer by the time he next gets in the ring. And against a younger fighter, that could prove problematic, particularly when Pacquiao's style is based on speed of foot, speed of hand, reactions. Not as much as it used to be. He's more of a thinking fighter than he was in his younger kind of threshing machine sort of days, ferocious days. But it's still speed of reaction, speed of thought, and speed of body is still incredibly important to the style that he produces. And having not been in the ring regularly, I don't know how regularly he's been sparring or how regularly he's been training, boxing training that is, not just playing basketball and that kind of thing. I know he does other bits and pieces to keep himself fresh. I don't know how much of that he's been doing. So going in against a young, fresh operator, someone who only fought of course, recently, January this month against Luke Campbell, scored a really good victory, but got a number of rounds in as well. You know, he won most of the rounds, and it was a conclusive finish, but he got off the deck to do it. He was given a lot to think about, so his mind's still fresh, and he is younger. He is a lot fresher in his career, a lot younger, a lot fresher, and all that would help him anyway. But the fact that Pacquiao's been out for so long as well doesn't bode well for the veteran. But that's not to say we should count him out. You know, Pacquiao's fought and beaten much better opposition than Garcia has. Even in the last couple of years, you know, Garcia's just heading towards the fringes of world class now, whereas Pacquiao, even in his last fight, beat Thurman, who was a reigning world champion and had been unbeaten throughout his career, and fought some good people in his own right. You know, he'd beaten Sean Porter, he'd beaten Danny Garcia, he'd beaten everyone put in front of him until he came up against Pacquiao. And Pacquiao, even though I think it was a split decision, I'd have to double check, but Pacquiao looked well worth the verdict that night. So people are excited about Pacquiao once again. You know, it dipped a bit after that loss to Jeff Horn, but people, I think, are now more enthused about him. But the longer he stays out of the ring, the more concerns there are, the more mystery there is about just how much he has left in the tank. And that's something Garcia should show us. And for Garcia, for all the people criticising him, he's going to make more money against Pacquiao than he would have made against Tank. And he will see it as an easier fight. You know, it's someone who's been beaten before. So in theory, there's a blueprint on how to beat him. Although I don't see Garcia adopting the style of Floyd Mayweather or of Jeff Horn. But there is a blueprint out there. He's not, you know, Pacquiao's not invulnerable. We know that. He'll see it as someone who's a lot older than him, who's had a long, hard career, grueling fights in the past, been knocked out as well, you know, brutally in the past. Not for a while, obviously, but that one Manuel Marquez one will live long in the memory. And it will also see someone who's been inactive. But the flip side of that as well for Garcia, because it's a win-win, is that even if Pacquiao is the force of old or somewhere near it and beats Garcia, as long as Garcia doesn't get absolutely destroyed, he can still grow from here. He's only 22. You know, he can look at his mentor, I guess you'd say now, Canelo Alvarez, who in his younger days, much younger days now, lost to Floyd Mayweather, was comprehensively beaten, but not, you know, battered or got knocked out in a few rounds. You know, he would have learned so much from that, you know, schooling that he got, appropriately enough, from Mayweather. And now he's the top pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. So even if, God forbid, Garcia does lose, and I'm saying God forbid from his point of view, I don't care who wins or loses, I'm just looking forward to the fight. But even if he were to lose, he'll learn a lot from sharing the ring with Pacquiao. His profile, which is already huge in certain demographics, will grow even bigger from getting in there with a legend like Pacquiao. And he can grow from there. And Pacquiao won't stay in the sport much longer. And there's no reason to believe Garcia can't improve even in defeat if that happens. And from Pacquiao's point of view, they were talking about him fighting Crawford, Spence, big-sized welterweights. You know, Pacquiao, I've never been convinced he's a huge welterweight. He obviously came up from very, very lightweights early in his career. I've never been fully convinced he really wants either of those fights. I think Thurman was kind of the tipping point. He was willing to go that far. But the elite level welterweights, Spence and Crawford, I'm not sure how interested he is. Maybe if they were the last fights left on the table for big money, then he'd take them. But I think when you look at those guys who are proven at world level, who are big guys, who are in most people's pound-for-pound top 10 or at least 15 in Crawford's case, and in Spence's case. And then you look at Ryan Garcia, who's not in anyone's pound-for-pound top 10, who's been fighting at lightweight, so 2 divisions below where Pacquiao's been fighting, who's yet to be tested at world level, never mind elite level. And you'd have to say it's on paper an easier fight for Pacquiao for more money because of the profile that Garcia brings. And it's a different audience as well. You know, the kind of teenage girls who scream for Garcia, the people who are on social media, the ones who follow influencers and so on, that crossover appeal. That's not really Pacquiao's demographic. And that's a way for him to get a chunk of that audience, not just for his boxing career, but for all the projects he's got going on outside of the ring as well. It's a masterful business move on the part of both men. But obviously we're boxing fans. We're not, you know, the accountants for either fighter. But I think in the ring it will deliver as well. Garcia, we saw in the last fight, he's ballsy. He's confident. Even after he'd been knocked down, he was still fighting in an aggressive manner, trying to finish the fight. And he did. It was a very aggressive move to get in position for that fight-ending left hook to the body against Luke Campbell. And we've seen it in other fights as well. He's growing in confidence with each fight. He's very athletic. He's fast. His footwork's good. Pacquiao's incredibly fast on his feet. His hand speed's still good. He's powerful. He'll be the bigger man, you would think, on the night, even though Garcia is very big for lightweight. Not sure, again, what weight they'll be fighting at. That's another thing that needs to be clarified. But I think in the ring, it can't be anything but an action fight. He's not going to do an Adrian Broner, Garcia. He's not going to come in, taste the power early on and decide to just survive like he did against Pacquiao. He's going to give it his all. And if that means getting carried out on his shield, he'll do it. And we know Pacquiao doesn't give an inch when he's under fire. So it'll be a very exciting fight. And the fights that people were disappointed about missing out on might not be missed out on forever, because if Pacquiao dominates Garcia, he might then feel confident enough to fight a Crawford or a Spence. And also, he might find there's not many big fights money-wise left for him, unless Oscar De La Hoya does eventually make this long fabled comeback that he's talked about and wants a rematch with Pacquiao, wants that smoke again. I wouldn't think he would, but you never know. So yeah, on that side, and then on Garcia's side, if he beats Pacquiao, then he's immediately an elite level fighter, which is one of the attractions of him taking the fight. He's immediately one of the biggest stars in boxing today. He's already up there, do you know what I mean? But this would solidify him at the very top of the sport, top 5, I guess you'd say. Maybe not in the pound for pound ratings, but in terms of attractions, if he's not already there. So then he could still fight a Tank Davis, and it's an even bigger fight because you've got the conqueror of Manny Pacquiao against Floyd Mayweather's unbeaten protege. I mean, what more could you want? So, and also Garcia and Tank are both still very young, so just because the fight isn't happening next doesn't mean it will never happen. It could easily happen down the line. They're both going to move up in weight. I mean, Garcia particularly. Tank's obviously not anywhere near as tall, but these fights can still happen. But let's focus on the positive and enjoy a fight that, while not the one we were projecting, could be a pleasant surprise rather than an unpleasant one, in my view. But I'd like to hear what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below what you make of the news that it is looking likely that Ryan Garcia will fight Manny Pacquiao next. What do you make of it? And how do you see it panning out in the ring? Who wins and how? Let me know. I'll respond to some of the comments. And I will be back on Thursday for ReFLEXions, 4:30 PM. And next Monday for the next ReFLEXions at the same time. Really appreciate your time, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.